Hello, dear friends, my dear audiences, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show. Once again, it's a Friday. Once again, it's a day that we are not busy, not only us, but at the federal, at the state, all levels. Kind of a little quiet, relatively. We're trying to sneak in to get a chance to talk about education. Education, that is the big word that holds the key to our future. No matter who you are, no matter how successful you are and how rich you are, you could be number one on the Forbes list or whoever. Well, you cannot be sure about your next generation, about your next generation. You cannot be sure about the future of this nation, but education does, right? With education as a starting, I would like to proudly present my big guest, my guest of honor, Honorable Mike M., trustee and vice president of the board of LACCD, to come to the show. You are seriously, wonderfully welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jack. My honor to be here.
Right. Honorable Mike M. has taken many important positions. At each of the important positions, he made quite a difference. Back in his years when he was on the California Assembly, one of the 80s, he ended with the assembly member that came out with the most, if not the most, one of the most more bill creativities. And among the bills proposed and authored or co-authored or he helped advocated that many went into law. One I remember so much that I went to his press release was that the anti-bully law, right? And many of those to follow about. Today we're talking about money. You know, education is something that you can't do without money. So it's all because about a newsletter that I read from his office, talking about the cut of our pizza, our pie, and to see, I was so surprised to find out that the slice we have in terms of education is only, yeah, you ready for that? 2%. So to get to the point, I have to ask you to make your own start about the funding, please, in education, please.
Yes, thank you so much. Education is so important. If you were to ask people what is the priority for spending money, most people that I talk to feel that education and transportation are very, very important. And yet, as you point out, it's only 2% of the national budget. Well, what are the others? Well, about 25%, 24% is Social Security, which is very, very important. But education is extremely important. If you don't become successful through education as a younger person, then your quality of life when you reach Social Security age, and many people, of course, are families of Social Security recipients, that will not be assured. And so there's two things happening. One is most people don't know we spend so little on education. And secondly, a lot of people are very, they don't trust the government. So if they don't trust the government, they're not actively involved in voicing their concerns. So when you have the two together, a low expense on education and yet a high distrust of the government, then that creates a problem where the people's desires may be not necessarily known.
That could be, sir, a outcome of a negative cycling, right? You're talking about people have less trust to the government because of the government pays less attention to education, and the lesser they pay attention to education, the lesser trust we have in them, and it goes from bad to worse and even worse and even worse until to a point when I read about your newsletter saying that 87% of American people said they don't necessarily trust the federal government.
Yes, they don't trust the federal.
Oh my God.
To be fair, I've been in the state government, and they don't trust many of us in state government and also in local government. But in terms of the three, They have relatively more trust for the local and state government officials. That may be because Washington is so far away, and it maybe is perceived as further away than someone who lives, say, 5 minutes from you in your local city
All right.
council.
Okay.
But I do think that we need to have a conversation about education and how important that is, and how we can advocate for that, so that we should trust our government to be able to respond to us. And if we feel education should be a higher priority, let's trust ourselves
All right.
to
Okay.
become organized
Yeah. All
so
right.
that eventually we can give the government a chance
Okay,
to
all right.
trust us.
In other words, once again, we are talking about the same cycle, however, going opposite way, uplifting.
Yes.
The uplifting
Absolutely.
way, right?
Thank
to
you.
increase our trust by letting the government know that we depend on you by some extent, even though Mitt Romney says 47% of us do that. There are 53 do not, but with we feel proud of being part of the 47. Anyway, we let them know so that they know they are higher responsibility to talk about and goes in a positive cycle instead of a negative. So things may be lifted up. Is that what you are calling
You
for?
are a very smart man.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Because that is exactly what we need to do. We should look at something and say, and question, why does it have to be that people don't trust government, and why does it have to be that they don't spend much on education? Why don't we change it and say, how do we get to the point where we can trust government? By participation, by holding it accountable, by giving them opportunities to be involved with our communities.
Yeah.
Why don't we spend more money on education rather than just say it's set in concrete and let's walk away and not be involved at all?
And the best way to do is that to vote who we trust that will represent us.
Yes, and to vote for those that promise to spend money where we want them to spend the money.
And also to those who, by checking their voting records, you feel more comfortable about this guy or this lady would represent you the way you want it.
That's right. With the new information technology, Google, and many opportunities from Twitter, we can go online and find out what a person has voted for in the past.
Exactly.
More than ever before.
Exactly. Yeah, sounds very, very positive. However, for my audiences, I owe you an explanation why we do this show. It is all because that I am so surprised. I was and still am so surprised by reading these numbers. And if you are ready, I'm gonna do the numbers to you. See if you can tell me we are on the right path or not. So. Here is the breakdown of where the 2014 federal tax went, right? To Social Security, 24%. To medical, to Medicare, Medicaid, children's health, so on and so forth, 24%. To defense and national security, 18%. To safety net programs, including food stamps, school meals, so on and so forth, 11%. To federal retirees and the veterans, 8%. To transportation and infrastructure, 3%. And to our education, the poor education, we have 2%. Those are the numbers. So it's surprisingly unbalanced. Do you think
Yes,
so?
and science and medical research, 2%, which is part of our education, to make sure we take our students and those that have their PhDs and do the research to give back to our communities. So it is surprising. I was very shocked because I always thought that we spend more money on education. Now, it is true that each state can also spend money on education as well. State governments can raise money for education through property taxes. But as a federal priority, I'm asking my constituents, should we spend more on education? If so, where should we spend it? How should we spend it?
Yeah, all right.
Universities, should we spend more money there? Should we give more grants? My biggest concern is that young people or anybody graduating with a college degree has 50 to 100 to $200,000 of debt.
Yeah.
The federal government should be concerned
That
about that.
will probably last
Because
them a
they can
long
never
lifetime.
buy a house. They
Yeah.
have a hard time
You
buying
are
a
right.
car.
You're absolutely
They
right.
will not
Yeah.
be able to get a loan to start their business. So
Yeah,
the
yeah.
federal government must be concerned about this
Yeah, exactly,
to
exactly.
keep the costs
Exactly.
down.
To my audience, I must say, Honorable Mike Yin is not a leader who does only the say. He does also, more importantly, get hands-on. Quite recently, he had worked with his office and lots of supporters to successfully have obtained $15 million
Yes.
to aid the school programs that combines the efforts of the school and the efforts of big companies to offer jobs and opportunities to the shaky students, who are shaky, so that they are assured that they have a future. My dear audiences, we're talking about, well, you know what? You have no problem making plans, so on and so forth. But your problem, bigger problem, is that there are lesser people who get hands-on on the job. So, Honorable Mike Yin is one of them. Let's take a very short moment now. When we come back, how about we combine these two into one subject? That what we shall do. All right.